by thinking about religion. Because religion is really a puzzle in some ways for evolutionary theorists. You think about the cost involved in many religious rituals. I, as a youth, had to waste lots of time in church on Sundays when I could have been out having fun, but that's nowhere near as bad as if I'd been brought up in some cultures where I would have had to routinely slash myself with chains, or if I'd been in a Khoisan tribe in southern Africa where I would have had to experience circumcision out in the desert as a kind of proof of my religious commitment, risking death, bleeding to death out in the kind of hot sun. From an evolutionary point of view, there's an enormous amount of maladaptation that seems to be involved in lots of religious rituals. An enormous amount of suffering. One only has to look at a lot of the current wars that are fueled by religious beliefs to think about the apparent pathology that religion seems to generate. So recently, a very hot area of debate in evolutionary biologists has been, can we explain human religious behaviour? Now, there's lots of different theories, and there's no clear resolution. One of them, a rather entertaining one, comes from Richard Dawkins, who says that religions are really a bit like a virus, a cultural virus that infects our minds, spreading in a kind of pathological way. So in that view, religion is simply pathological. Another view suggests that religious belief is simply a product of how our mind works, that we've been selected to, if in doubt, attribute agency, attribute action to things, even if it's not quite certain, because it's much better to falsely assume that there's about to be a leopard leaping on me than it is to think, no, that's not really a leopard, and then get eaten. So maybe evolutionary psychologists suggested that we have some hyperactive agency detective device, and this has gone a bit haywire in our modern culture, and we attribute kind of godlike actions all over the place. In both those accounts, religious behaviour is really pathological. But there are some people who want to argue that there are real Darwinian advantages to religious belief. It is the case that there appear to be some individual advantages. People who are religious seem to live longer on average and be a bit healthier. But perhaps the most controversial idea of all is that there are advantages not to individuals but to groups within religion. Now, I was always taught that group selection is a thoroughly pernicious concept, that good Darwinian selection acts on individuals, not on groups. But there has been a resurgence of the view that at least for humans, group selection might have played an important role. And religion might have been one of the really fundamental things that may have facilitated that. And that the inheritance mechanisms might have been cultural rather than biological. Because what group selection requires to take place is something that maximises the differences between groups and minimises differences within groups. And that's exactly how a lot of religions appear to function. And there is some evidence that's been pointed to by people like David Sloan Wilson that, at least on the face of it, is compatible with the hypothesis that our religious beliefs, values, institutions and rituals may be a consequence of cultural group selection. For example, work by Rick Solsis has shown that if you look at communes in the United States, those that are based on religions tend to survive longer. Similarly, if you look at kibbutzes in Israel, those that are religious ones are more economically successful than those that are secular. So it seems that religious groups might have some kind of economic and longevity advantage. Jesse Bering, an evolutionary psychologist, has done a really rather clever experiment to probe the way in which beliefs might act to promote social policing of action and how that might feed into religious belief. What he did was to invite students to do an experiment. And they were told that what they were doing was to test a test that had been developed in their lab. It was a test of spatial ability. But the test wasn't really quite working right. And every now and again, the correct answer would appear on the screen. And if they were good citizens, what they should do is quickly press the space bar and the correct answer would disappear and they could go back to doing the test as they were meant to be doing. They shouldn't cheat. But there was a cunning variant in this experiment. It had three conditions. One, just as I've described. In the second condition, they were told that the person who developed this test had rather sadly died. And in the third condition, they were told not only that this person had died, but that sometimes people had suggested his ghost had been known to haunt the lab. And quite amazingly, what they found was that in those who were told, even though they didn't believe in ghosts, those that were told that his ghost had been seen were much quicker at pressing the spacebar to make the correct answer disappear. And these are people who didn't believe in ghosts, who didn't believe in supernatural agents. So maybe that kind of belief that we're secretly being watched helps keep human social groups together. And that might have been a powerful force shaping human social organisation and religious rituals. One final example. This view, and it is highly contentious, has been popularised by David Sloan Wilson in his wonderful book, Darwin's Cathedral. And one of the examples that he uses that's quite interesting is the example of the Jainist religion in India. It has about 2 million followers there, and these people are often highly successful financially. Now, the monks in this religion, and you may have seen them, wear face masks, and they have to sweep the ground in front of them so that they don't breathe in or insects or tread on them. They can own no possessions or property. They're homeless. They have to kind of beg for food. It seems like this is a really kind of pathological, hard to explain set of religious beliefs when the most highly prized members of your society sometimes even go to the extent of fasting themselves to death. How could this evolve by Darwinian means? Well, what David Sloan Wilson has suggested is that they act to police religious adherence in that society. Because it turns out that there is no greater honour you can have in that society than to have one of those priests come into your house, and they'll only take food from you if they can see that you adhere to all the right religious rituals and practice. So maybe the advantages are occurring not to individuals, but to the group as a whole. Maybe it's cultural group selection that has driven the evolution of religion. There's an awful lot of maybes there, an awful lot of things to be argued and debated and investigated experimentally in the future. I think if Darwin was alive today, he would be amazed and excited about all we have discovered about the cognitive abilities in other species. He'd be delighted that the trees that he started off, that he inspired with that little drawing in his notebook way back in 1837, have been put to such amazing and productive uses. And he'd be intrigued by our attempts to explain religion in evolutionary terms. But he would emphasise to us that there's still an awful lot we don't know about the evolution of cognition. There's still an awful lot we don't know about how the human mind has evolved. And there's still an awful lot we don't know about the evolution of complex cultures in humans. It's an incredibly exciting time to be an evolutionary biologist, I think. I can't wait to get back to work tomorrow. Thank you.